Hello, welcome to Defrosted Chicken. My mommy's name is Natalie Calderon, and she will be your host for today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2. That was my daughter Eva. She wanted to do the intro today, so I went ahead and let her. Before we get into episode 2, I would like to go back to episode 1 for a little bit. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has reached out to me, whether it's people that I know or people that I don't know. It has been very fulfilling, I guess, to say the least, um, to know that so many women felt heard and seen. I got a lot of messages telling me that they cried while they were listening to episode 1. And you know what? So did I. I cried when I played it back because that shit was tough. That was a tough time in my life. And also, it was therapeutic in a way to say things out loud that I've never said before. And it was also scary because when I heard it back, I was like, shit, I'm really going to post this. I'm really going to put this somewhere where people can hear it, and people that know me but don't know this side of me, and people that just completely don't know me at all. In the messages that I did receive, there were a lot of moms that were telling me about the things that they've been through or are going through. And I want to talk a little bit about those things before we get into today's episode, because I feel like it just needs to be talked about just for a little bit. Now, I want to talk about a couple of things that I noticed were kind of a trend from moms. And I'm not going to put, people's business out there like that. I'm not going to say any names, but I do want to touch on a few things. And the first thing is there were several women who told me that their spouse didn't understand what they were going through, which, like I said in episode 1, I know how that feels. But what really got me was the amount of women who told me that they were told by either their spouse or family members that postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety are not a real thing and it's all made up. So that shit pissed me off. And to that, I want to say they are not made up. I wish they were made up. I was in the trenches of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. So I'm here to say that it's definitely real, and that type of mentality. How do I say this? Is fucking stupid. I really hope that more men listen to episode 1, whether you're already a father or you're going to be a father, because it kind of gives you an idea of the things that might happen and or that are happening that maybe your wife can't say. And I hope that you can be open minded instead of, going and telling your wife, your girlfriend, your baby mama, whatever, that's already going through a lot and already has a lot in her head, turning around and saying, like, hey, this is not real, or it's all in your head. And you know what? It is in our heads. You're right. It is in our heads. If that's how you think, then you're right. The problem is our heads, our brains. Not because it's made up, that's because that's where the problem lies. And it's something that a lot of women go through. So, anyways, please be open minded. Saying something like that to someone is just, it's hurtful and it's ignorant. One of the calls that I received was from a friend who had previously gone through postpartum depression in the past with her firstborn, and now she just had another baby, and unfortunately, she's going through it again. She did, however, tell me that this experience is different from the last one, but nonetheless, it's still very hard. Now, I did get her permission to share this story because this story is going to take us into today's topic. So she went to her 6-week postpartum appointment with her OBGYN, and her OBGYN told her that she cannot extend her disability, that she would have to go see her primary care doctor. So she made an appointment. Turns out they switched her primary care doctor. She was going to go see someone that she'd never seen before, but she needed to get this done because her disability was going to run out. Now, because she is suffering with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, she is on a treatment plan that she started with her OBGYN. She's on medication. She started therapy. And this is important because this is going to tie into the rest of the story. So, right off the bat, things are kind of just not going so great. She called to make an appointment at this new doctor's office, and the receptionist was rude. But you know what? She has to get this done. She makes an appointment. She finally gets in about 2 weeks later or so. So she said that when she showed up, that the doctor goes into the room, and first thing is he tells her, like, I'm going to be recording this through AI. Doesn't ask for her consent, doesn't ask for anything. He then asks her why she's there, and she says, well, I'm here because I need my disability extended. He proceeds to ask her what her disability is, and she says, well, I have postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. I'm not ready to go back to work. He then says, depression and anxiety are not a real disability. There are people with real disabilities like cancer that need to be on disability. This is not a disability. He then tells her that she can't just go in there and ask him to put her on disability. She responds with, I'm not asking you to put me on disability. I'm already on disability. I just need an extension. I'm not ready. I am taking the medication. I started therapy. I'm taking the steps that I need to take, but I'm just not ready. He proceeds to mention it probably 1 to 2 more times that she can't just go in there and ask to be put on disability. And she again reminds him that she's not asking to be put on disability. She's already on disability. She just needs it extended. Had he bothered to look at her chart, because it was obvious that he didn't, he would have seen that she has a history of severe postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. He would have seen that she was on a treatment plan, but it didn't seem like he even bothered to look at her chart. Unfortunately, it gets worse, because then he proceeds to ask her where she works and what is her return date to work. She tells him, and he says, oh, well, your anxiety is going to be gone by then. Because, I don't know, apparently he can see the future. And he's telling her that she's going to be cured of her anxiety and her depression by this date. Now, I'm no doctor, but there's no way for him to know that. Now, when you go into a doctor's office, for example, let's say you sprained your ankle and the doctor tells you, like, okay, you're going to be, or you should be back to normal between 5 to 7 weeks. And I don't actually know how long it takes for a sprained ankle to get better, but let's just say it's 5 to 7 weeks. And that's what, a 2 week difference. He's not giving you the exact date. Hey, by this exact date, you're going to be fine. Now, that's assuming that everything goes as planned. And a sprained ankle, it's something that you can monitor with, I don't know, x-rays or something, and you can kind of tell if it's getting better or not, right? How are you going to tell someone that their mental health is going to be good to go by this day? It just doesn't make sense. So she responds with, so you're telling me that by this day, I'm not going to have anxiety anymore? He responds with, no, that's not what I said. She says, that is what you said. He says, well, that's not what I meant. So now he's starting to try and retract what he's saying. But unfortunately, that doesn't even matter because it just gets worse. He then tells her, if you don't want to work, just quit your job. She responds with, I don't want to quit my job. That's not why I'm here. Like, I want to go back to work. I'm just not ready. I'm having a lot of anxiety. Just the thought of leaving my son. And again, remember, guys, she has a history of postpartum depression. She's also dealing with that right now. So then he tells her, if you don't want to work, just quit your job. It's not fair that you're going to be sitting at home collecting money and not doing anything. It broke my heart to get this call and talk to my friend and listen to her in tears tell me what she was going through or what she just went through, because you're not in the right headspace when you're going through all of this to be dealing with an asshole like this. It is the last thing that you need on your plate. He refuses to acknowledge the fact that she's already on a treatment plan, keeps saying that, they need to start a treatment plan and see where it goes before he can even consider to extend her disability. Again, she had already mentioned that she was on a treatment plan, and if he would have looked at her chart, he would have seen that. So he ends up telling her that he's not going to extend anything. He's not signing anything. She doesn't want to argue. She's like, fine. Like she said, I just wanted to get out of there. It took everything I had not to cry while I was in there. And that just really, really pisses me off. You would think this man would just let her go, let her walk out the door, stop talking, stop doing anything else. But of course, he doesn't. He then proceeds to walk her out. Now, he didn't open the door to the exam room where he met with her and just let her walk out. He walked her all the way to the front door, not the front door that leads to a reception area. He walked her past reception all the way to the door to exit the building, like his office. When do you ever really see a doctor do that? That doesn't happen to me. I've never had a doctor walk me all the way out. He then tells her, let's do this. If you want to come back, almost with the tone like, if you want to come back, like he knew she wouldn't want to. I mean, who would? And he goes, we can establish a treatment plan for you and we can go from there. She just left. Then she tells me, like, I'm obviously not fucking going back. I was like, well, duh. Right? And she was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, the disability ends in a week. It took me 2 weeks to get in to see him. Like, I don't know what to do. So we talked about it for a while, and I suggested that she email the OBGYN and tell her what happened and see if maybe she can extend it or she can kind of guide her in the next steps to take. Because what he did wasn't okay and she needed to file a complaint. That's what I said. I also told her that I knew that filing a complaint and doing all this stuff is probably the last thing that she wants to be doing right now because she already has a lot on her mind. She did end up emailing her OBGYN, and her OBGYN was able to extend her disability a few more weeks. I also got her in touch with someone who um, worked at the California Medical Board, and she kind of helped her through the process of filing a complaint. But guys, what the fuck? She did tell me that after she left, she went on Yelp to look at the reviews, and she says she wished she would have done that before she showed up, because obviously the last thing you're thinking is that you're going to have an experience like this, right? And not a shocker, there were other people on there complaining about his behavior and similar things like this that he did. Um, I don't think I can share his name. I don't think like legally I can. I'm not sure how this works. I'm just not gonna say what his name is, but oh my god. I was completely I've never been in a situation like this, okay? So I was completely like taken aback by it because I've never had a doctor talk to me like that. And I guess it's like a common thing. I guess it happens more than I knew. Alrighty, so today's topic is maternity leave. Now, I live in California in the United States of America, and as you know, in every state, maternity leave looks a little different, and also in every country, it looks different. I want to start off by sharing with you guys the top 5 countries with the best maternity leave. So here we go. Number 1, we have Norway coming in at 59 weeks at 100% pay. You guys, that is insane. That is amazing. Insane in a good way. Okay. Number 2, we got Bulgaria coming in at 58.6 weeks at 90% pay. Number 3 is the UK, 52 weeks at 90% pay. Number 4, Estonia, 52 weeks at 75% pay. And number 5 is Canada, 50 weeks at 55% pay. Now, there are a lot of other countries that have really good maternity leaves, but I'm just going to name the top 5 because we could be here for a long time talking about all of this. Now, because I do live in the United States and I think most of my listeners are in the US, I want to share your typical US maternity leave. Again, each state is different. The average amount of weeks that you get are 10. Again, each state is different. However, I think it's actually like 10 to 12. I also want to point out that the United States, it's one of 8 countries worldwide that does not guarantee maternity leave. Now, you can disagree with me or you can agree with me on this next thing that I'm going to say. 10 to 12 weeks is not enough fucking time. Obviously, depending on where you work, your time off after you have a baby is going to vary. Now, when I had my daughter 8 years ago, I worked for a big company and I got my maternity leave, and then I was also able to add some baby bonding time. I didn't end up going back to work till my daughter was 4 months old. Now, 4 months is a little bit more than what you typically get, but it's really not enough time. Okay, your body takes time to heal. Your mind takes time to heal right after having a child, and then you have to be able just to go back to work, right? Because then there's the fear of losing your job, but you need your job. So there's a lot going on. We definitely live in a man's world, that's for sure. According to some research that I did, it looks like the average amount that mothers are getting paid on maternity leave is about 60% of their regular pay. Okay, so just keep in mind again that this varies significantly depending on the company that you work for and the state that you live in. Here in California, we're looking at 60 to 70% of a mother's weekly salary, depending on the employer, obviously. Now, if you are just getting by financially, whether you're a single mom or you have a dual income, you're married, you live with your boyfriend, whatever the case is, but you need 100% of your pay in order for you guys to be okay and pay your bills and not fall behind, right? This isn't going to work. Getting 60 to 70% of your pay is just not going to work. You need all of your pay. Now, you just had a child. The last thing you need to be worrying about is this. You don't want to add more stress to an already stressful situation, but this is the world that we live in, okay, guys? Now, I don't know how common this is, but as I'm doing my research, I did come across a few forums where they're discussing this, and there are some moms saying that they had to get a little side hustle while they were on maternity leave in order to have enough income to be able to pay their bills. And I mean, they have a job, so they're on maternity leave, but the percentage that they're getting is not enough. So now they have to add more stress. Hey, I got to start a side hustle because I need more income. This is not okay. And this is why mental health is really important, especially after having a baby. We have discussed multiple things already in episode 1 and now this episode of all the things that contribute to your mental health, because all of this is not really positive information that I'm giving you, right? um, about things that women are going through and families are going through and dads are going through after having a baby. There isn't enough support. So I want to kind of move away from the financial part of this. Let's talk about some of the stuff that mothers are struggling with while they're on maternity leave. This is something that I was doing, that I was researching. And I want to talk about this one thing is feeling bored. Now, I have felt bored. Okay, now let's dive into this a little bit and explain before you guys start judging. Like, oh my God, you're bored? Yes. Taking care of a newborn baby can be very mundane. You're doing the same thing day in and day out. They sleep most of the time, right? You're changing diapers and you're feeding constantly. It's the same thing over and over and over. Now you're exhausted, you're tired, you have a million things to do. When the baby's taking a nap, you have to try and find time. So it's not like you're not busy because you're busy, but what you're doing is boring. I mean, you can disagree with me obviously, but I can definitely see what these moms are talking about by being bored because I mean, you need interaction with people, with adults, and sometimes when you're on maternity leave, it's just you and the baby. Depending on your situation at home, sometimes dad is working, so or kids are at school, whatever the case is. Like it's very repetitive stuff day in and day out. And by the time your baby is finally doing cute, fun little stuff, you're probably back at work already. And I know this isn't the case for everyone, but not everyone is fortunate enough to work for a company that's going to give them a great maternity leave. So now you're dealing with your child being taken care of by somebody else, and they're getting to experience all these cute, fun stuff for the first time while you're at work. I personally was fortunate enough to have my mother in law watch my daughter when I went back to work. So when I had my first daughter, I was working a regular 9 to 5, and you spend 8 to 9 hours at work. That doesn't include your commute, so you're probably spending about 10 hours away from your child. And even though she was with someone that I trusted and I knew that she was in good hands, of course I would have preferred to be with her. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have either a mom or a mother in law or just someone they know and trust be able to watch their kids. Some people have to take their children to daycare and someone that they don't know is watching their children. Or, you have to hire someone that you don't really know to watch your kids. That is harder. And this is things that we're forced to do because we have to get back to work because the maternity leave here in the US is just not long enough. The benefits that are offered are not enough. And honestly, like I want to move to Norway right now. Not to mention that now that you're going back to work, your baby is still super little. Now you have to find a way to balance your work life and your mom life. That is tough, especially when your baby is super little still because their sleep is all over the place. If you get lucky, your baby is sleeping through the night after, I don't know. Well, with my daughter, I had to sleep train her. So by the time I went back to work at 4 months, I trained her to sleep through the night because I needed to get enough sleep in order for me to wake up at 6 a.m., get ready, and go to work. Right? But she was very easy to train. She was a really easy baby, but not everyone is lucky. Some babies are not that easy, and that's okay. It's normal. Every single baby is different. And also, if you're breastfeeding, let's add that to the list of things that you need to do while you're at work. So, not only are you going to be working, but you're going to be missing your tiny little baby that's not old enough for you to be leaving them. You're also going to have to figure out how you're going to pump. Now, let's hope that your job has somewhere for you to go pump, like a lactation room or something, if you're lucky enough. I remember when I was breastfeeding and I went back to work, we had a lactation room, and I'm doing a little air quotes right now because it wasn't really a lactation room. It was an old closet that I think was like a donations room. So there was a bunch of old clothes in there that smelled like mothballs and a chair. and that was it. And you had to take turns because there was just one. It was so freaking annoying. So, just to give you guys an idea, I worked for a big company, so there was a lot of women there, right? So, you have all these women that work here, and you have one little lactation room. And actually, now that I think about it, there was two chairs in there, and there was a curtain dividing both chairs, so there could actually be two people in there at one time. But it wasn't really a lactation room. There wasn't a window. It was just an old closet. And they had a trash can there. And typically, what you would do is you would eat your lunch while you're pumping. And sometimes people would throw their lunch out or the rest of their lunch out into the trash can that's right there, into this room that's super small with no windows. And the room would stink. And then you add the freaking smell of the old clothes. It was not pleasant at all whatsoever. This just became super stressful for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other women. I decided after probably a month of going back to work that I was going to stop breastfeeding because my milk production just really started to dry up. I think it was just the stress of everything, of having to juggle so many things. And then, like, I wasn't really able to pump as much as I was when I was at home because I'm at work. So, I just decided to switch over to formula. And I did have a hard time with that because I felt like I was losing this connection, this bond that I had with my daughter. I was sad, but I knew it's what I had to do. But also, um, I don't know, how do I say this? I felt guilty because I'm like, man, the best thing for her is for me to give her breast milk, right? That was where my head was because that's what I just kept getting told. Like, you have to give your baby breast milk. That's the best thing that you can do for her. The nurses at the hospital told me, and like, and I was like, okay, okay, like that's what I have to do. Like, that's what I have to do. But then I came to realize, like, fuck this shit. Like, this is hard. Like, there's so many babies that are drinking formula and they're fine. Like, why am I over here stressing about this? And I get angry sometimes because I'm like, why were they making me feel bad about it, you know? If you don't want to breastfeed your baby, or if you can't breastfeed your baby for whatever reason, you don't need to give anybody an explanation as to why you don't want to breastfeed or why you can't breastfeed. Okay, it's hard to breastfeed, especially if you're having trouble with your milk production. Um, it's not good for your mental health. Like, my mental health was declining because it's just getting more and more stressful, and I just made the decision, and it took me a minute, but then I was okay with it. This time around, again, I'm breastfeeding, I'm producing enough milk, this and that. With the anxiety and everything, the stress, my milk production again started to slow down, and I had to come to the decision that I was going to switch over to formula. And this time around, I was way, way more okay with it. Like, this is not even a concern. This is what's best for me and for the baby. We're moving on. All right, so now let's talk about paternity leave. So in the US, only 27% of workers have access to paternity leave, guys. And the average amount of time that they get off is 1 week. Again, that varies depending on the company that you work for, but the average is 1 week, and that's because there are no national laws requiring paid paternity leave. Just 1 week, fellas. Honestly, like, 1 week is nothing to be able to be home with your wife who just birthed a child and help her, especially if she had a C-section. Like, that shit can be painful and require a lot of help and assistance. So now that we talked about paternity leave in the USA, let's talk about the top 5 other countries in the world that have great paternity leave time off. Okay, guys? So coming in at number 1 is Japan. They have the longest. They get 1 year of paid paternity leave for brand new fathers. That is amazing. 1 whole year. All right, we also have Sweden. Sweden is coming in at 480 days at 80% pay, which can be shared between parents. Then we have Canada with 18 months of paid paternity leave, which can also be shared between parents. Then we have Spain with 12 weeks of full pay. And then we have Lithuania, I think I pronounced that properly, at 30 days of paternity leave at 77.58% pay. So, all right, guys, so those are the top 5 countries for paternity leave. As you guys can see again, the US is very far down on that list. I mean, if it was on maternity leave, of course it's going to be on paternity leave, right? Can it always be worse, guys? Yes, it can always be worse. Okay. Should we be thankful that there's at least something? Yes. But can it be better? Of course, it can be better. We need to be able to do better. This job of being a mother and giving birth and bringing life into the world is not easy. And it's not easy to be a dad either. So we just got to do better. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and leave you with all this information so you guys can sit here and think about all of this that I just said. It was a lot of information that I didn't know before. So when I decided to do this episode on maternity leave, I didn't think I was going to um, come out learning all this stuff and also kind of feeling sad that I don't live in Norway. um, but anyways, like I said in episode 1, I want to end each episode with a positive quote about parenting. So, this is a quote for episode 2. I came across this and I thought it was super cute. There's no name, so I don't know who wrote it, but it says, "Before I became a parent, I had no idea how much laughing with my toddler would heal my heart. That little human has no idea how much light they bring into my life." So, even though things are not always beautiful, you can always find the beauty in your children, guys. I mean, I remember when my daughter was a toddler and we would laugh together. It is definitely healing, and I can't wait to do it all over again with my little one. All right, guys, until next time.